What's up, Chumbags? Welcome to the HQ. My name is Kandula, and today I'm joined by my partner in crime, Nick Sivak, for yet another episode of the Respawn Station podcast. Later on, we're going to talk about Stop Killing Games and what it's all about. No controversy, just the facts. But before we get to that, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Nick, how many platinums do you have?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I think it's... Oh, wait. Is that something that you can see on the PlayStation app? Because I now have that app.
Yeah, it is.
Let me see.
So while Nick is looking it up, let me just tell you why Nick has the PlayStation app. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go on Instagram right now and check out Start Screen Gallery. And you know what? What I think is actually an unexpected pleasure of our new Instagram page is that it's sort of like a mini game in that you can go to it and, you know, I've cleverly adjusted the image preview on each post so that you can't actually see the title. And what this essentially means is that if you go to the page, you have to guess what game each of the start screens are until you obviously click on them and see for yourself. It's a fun little exercise. I recommend you try it at home. Obviously Start Screen Gallery on Instagram. Check it out. Doesn't support the channel, but it's just a fun little thing if you're a nerd like us. Ooh. All right, Nick, how many platinums do you have?
That took me exactly that amount of time to find the answer to this. So I was gonna posit a guess, and I was one off from my guess. Platinum trophies, according to this app, I have 20.
20.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I have, Nick, 27.
Ooh, I was gonna say like 34 for you.
I appreciate the confidence. But no, that's just the fake question to throw everyone off. Of course, if you're a frequent listener to the podcast, you'll know the question is, Nick, what have you been playing, my friend?
Yeah, mainly been split between a couple different things this week. The one main thing that we will be talking more about is the altars. But I have played a bit more RoboCop, and I've been playing 76 on the side like usual. RoboCop is still fun.
Side hustle's always going.
Yeah. It's still fun. It's getting a little bit more fun because every little level up you get or whatever, you can put skill points into these different abilities. So now I have like the ability to ricochet bullets off of walls and stuff. So there's some fun stuff that RoboCop is introducing here. Still feel the same though. It's like, take it with your teaspoon of jank, but it's still really fun.
Yeah.
76 I've just been fishing a lot, honestly, to be fair. Don't really have much to say other than I caught one
Nick
of the
is that meme. What is like it ain't much, but it's an honest living. That's Nick in Fallout 76.
Yep. I caught one of the legendary fish today, which are like the hard special ones. There's like 3 of them in the game right now, I think. So
what do you get? Can you like put them up on your wall or something like that?
Yep.
Nice.
They have like different displays that you can get, and then you can put a bunch of different fish that you catch up. So yeah, just chipping away at that really, and doing the free battle pass kind of thing, the grind as it were. Trying to think if there's anything else really. I think that's it outside of the altars, which I've definitely put a lot more time into. Currently, I think I'm around 18 hours in, PlayStation said last night when I was done. And I am a good ways into Act 2 of the game. I believe there's 3 acts total. And my emotions with this game have been on a bit of a roller coaster. So it's funny because last week I mentioned how with this game, like, it was a bit overwhelming, and I'm not really used to management games. So it's like a lot of different gameplay styles and story things and things that you have to keep track of. And that's definitely still progressed more into Act 2. It's really funny because I think the word for me personally that describes it best is stressful, but it's manageable. Kind of. Like, that's the thing where it's like, in the moment, I don't really feel that great, where I'm just like, oh my God, like, I have to go all the way over here. I have to get these rocks. And, I don't think I mentioned it last time, but there is a timer per day. We were talking about how there was like a overarching timer when the sun was going to come.
The sun timer, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But each day also has a timer to it that you can choose to do. You can choose to spend that time however you want. So there's like a working period, which is most of the day, and then there's a 3-hour period at night where you're kind of tired, and it's at that point when you should be going back to your base because like a radiation storm will kick up, so it kind of forces you to go back home at the end of the night. But you can use that time to either continue to work on projects in the base, or you can use that time to hang out with your alters and kind of bond and get their relationship stats increased and stuff like that. And then there's also
does that impact anything, or like does it like they function better if they get like the relationship points up?
Okay. I'll get into that, but just as a little bow tie on the end of this, there's an even further chunk of time where it's after that tired period, and basically they denote that by saying you're exhausted in this period, and you can still do things during this time chunk of the day, but however long you spend doing stuff in this like 3-hour chunk or whatever will eat into the next day. So you'll wake up later in the next day if you stay and essentially crunch and everything. So that's important because there's a couple things that I have to talk about with that. But the relationship meter, this has had some very surprising things happen over the course of the game. I don't really know if I want to get like super spoilery with any of it because it is still a relatively new game. But if you just, because I can tell this one because this is not story specific. This happened to me in Act 1 and also happened to me in Act 2. If you just tell everybody like, hey, do your tasks, go to work, all this, and you just completely ignore hanging out with them, eventually you will get like a little side quest that pops up that has the the very friendly name of Alter Rebellion, and essentially somebody will be like, hey, I need to talk to you. You go and talk to them, and it's like, hey, you need to get your act together. Like, people are pissed off. Like, you need to start allowing people to have like downtime and everything. And then eventually it gives you an objective where it's like, okay, you need to improve your alter's mental state in the next 5 days, and if you don't do that, then essentially they just rebel and kill you and give you a game over state, and then you have to reload a save.
I see.
That actually clues me into another aspect that I didn't get into last time, which is the game over states. And specifically, the game autosaves and creates a save every day that you like wake up or whatever. There is no autosaving in the middle of a day or anything like that. It's only at the start of a day you will get a save. This ended up hurting me because in Act 1, I got all the way like pretty far into this, and I basically hit a point where shit hit the fan and multiple things were happening at once. It was like I was having, people that were miserable. There was a magnetic storm that came in that pretty much broke a bunch of rooms in the base. I didn't have the resources to make the things to fix the rooms, and we also had the ticking time bomb of the sun. And the goal for Act 1 was we had to build this bridge to cross a chasm. And it was like, I had like half the stuff that I needed for the bridge. And so it got to the point where I pretty much hit a game over state. And then like at that point, they ask you to reload a save. And so I was like, well, there's so much stuff happening right now. It's like, I don't know if I can really salvage this. And it was me at my lowest point with this game where I'm like, man, like I'm not really good at these management games. And like, I was like really kind of trying here, but it just sounds like they keep just shoveling stuff onto your lap and everything. I was like, I really don't want to go all the way back because I don't really remember how I had my stuff set up and everything. Eventually, I was like, well, I explored the area. I have a better idea of what to expect out of the goal. It's like, I'm just going to bite the bullet and go back to the first day of the act and try it again.
Oh,
so
sure.
I went back to that, and much to my pride and surprise, I did learn a couple things from that experience and was much more efficient, was way better prepared for all of the issues that were going to come up, and eventually was able to, finish out Act 1 with bonus time to spare to do extra tasks and everything. So that felt really nice after.
It almost sounds like you've created a roguelike for yourself. You know what I mean? It's like not intentionally, but you're like, I learned it from this. I got to go back.
Kinda, yeah. The one thing that's nice is that things out in the world are not randomized like you might expect. So like whenever I restarted, it was like, okay, when you go to a place that you have to build a excavation site, we'll say, you have to set that stuff up on the planet surface to gather like minerals and organics and stuff like that. Once you get to a location that spawns at, you have to use these pylon things to kind of like figure out where the deepest vein is in the area, and that's where you're allowed to place your excavator. Those are a fixed location. So even though like I, restarted all the way back at the beginning, I was like, okay, I know exactly where I have to put my pylons to put this down. I can get this up and running in like, 10 seconds versus like a minute of trying to like go around and figure out where you have to place this. So there are certain things like that were immediately like I was better prepared for. But then also I just had like a little bit better understanding of the actual mechanics and everything. So I was able to almost explore the entire area within like 2 or 3 in-game days, whereas it took me like 10 like the first time through. So that was a big help. Going forward, so I am still having fun with the game. It still does feel stressful, but manageable. So like anytime like something comes up, it's like, okay, I know I can't put this off. I have to start thinking about it right now and thinking about how I can balance getting some progress done on this problem versus my other problems that I'm trying to figure out, right? So it never feels like it's gotten like completely out of hand where it's just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this game. I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to finish it at this point, but it's just like they have so much stuff happening at once that all feeds into each other that it definitely keeps the pressure up. And it's like, essentially, where I'm at in Act 2, there's this giant gravity well that appeared. And it's like, okay, we have to figure out how to stop this gravity field. So you're going through and you're like researching different technology that you need to place to be able to like map the gravity and stuff. And then you're going to need these towers that are going to allow you to dispel the gravity and everything. Science terms more than I would be able to communicate effectively.
Danger over there.
Exactly. So you have that. And then, for example, there was a miner. I will talk about this because I think that this is a really cool kind of side story moment and will really illustrate how this game kind of works. One of my alters was a miner, and in his memories and in his story progression, there was a mining accident that caused him to lose his arm. And when you create the altar, he has the arm back. And so when you're first talking with him, he thinks that his arm is gone, but he looks down and sees his arm is back, and he starts having like a panic attack, essentially. He's like, what happened? Like, why is my arm not gone? And as the days go on, he starts having phantom pain where like it's like reverse phantom pain, I guess, where like he thinks that the arm should be gone and is feeling this intense pain and everything. And he asks if you want to give him like painkillers and stuff. You can tell him yes or no, or just like kind of leave him to his own devices. I left him to his own devices. A couple days later, he cut his own arm off again. And like, he's like, bleeding out in the thing. And so it's like at that point I didn't have a doctor's office or anything, and I'm like, oh my god, like what am I supposed to do here? And so that sent me down a path of like trying to get like a doctor's office. I had to research in the memory thing. There is a path that lets Jan become a doctor, and so it's like, okay, I should probably get like the doctor in here to try to figure out like how to fix things. But then also on the other end of that, once he's healed, because he's missing the arm again, he's not working as efficiently as like you need them. Like his stats that he would have been able to bring in with 2 arms is now lower. So then you start talking to the scientist, and the scientist is like, well, we can get him a prosthetic arm. You can fabricate that in the machine, or we can use the rapidium and the womb machine to grow his arm back and everything, and be like, hey, like you kind of need to do this. So it's constantly like balancing things that are just dropped on your lap of issues while juggling multiple other things, and then also you're juggling like the emotional state of people to be like, okay, like how do we address this, because this is clearly going to be a problem. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I'm curious that like I know you're a big sci-fi fan, and I'll use this as an example, maybe not it's like a perfect example, but because it's topical, they just had the trailer for Project Hail Mary earlier this week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, I think it was like the most watched new IP trailer ever for a movie, I think. But so you like sci-fi stories. I'm curious if this has enough you're talking about the organic kind of like player choice sort of like story moments, but is there enough of a narrative that you find compelling enough to like, oh, I have to see through to the end to see like how it happens, or is it more just like, oh, I want to see just how these characters end up in due to my own actions?
It's good that you bring that up. It is interesting for me specifically currently. The narrative, because part of it is obviously like this Martian / Hail Mary-esque thing where you are stuck on this planet. And so part of it is talking to faceless people that seem to know your situation and know things that they are not telling you about your situation, that you're trying to interface with and trying to get information from. Then you also have the stories that you're talking about with your alters, where it's like, so in your timeline, maybe you decided to leave home in pursuit of college, and your mother, who was sick, passed away. This other alter stayed home, and in his timeline, mom was still alive when you went onto this mission. And so there's like emotional stuff that like they try to work through, and like you have an ex-wife in the game. One of the alters is still married, and it's like you need to get her help to get like some information. So it's like, well, maybe you could talk to her for me, because she's not going to talk to me and stuff. So there's a very interesting kind of dynamic that comes out with these two things. And the thing that I'm constantly intrigued by in one part is how much information do you let the people that are running the operation in on, and how much do you not? And there's certain points where it's like you kind of have to make a choice, where it's like, okay, either I'm with these people, or like people are going to find out about stuff here. There's also a lot of really interesting conversations about the ramifications of like this type of cloning and stuff. So one kind of thing that was really interesting was that in order to get the bridge fixed, we needed these like gravity anchors essentially. And the scientist was telling me about this. It's like, yes, they were, their standard issue for Project Versant, whatever that was. It was like, whoever set up this base didn't put that in. They need to be fired or whatever. It's like, talk to your people at the corporation. They'll have them send over the plans so we can make these. Then you talk to the guy from the corporation. You mentioned that the scientist is saying, Project Versant, we need these files. Apparently, in your timeline, this was an abandoned project because they didn't come up with any results. So they don't have the plans for this technology. And so it's like, there's like really interesting kind of things where it's like, so your clone in their mind knows about a project that we abandoned, but it progressed to the point that they have like technology and everything from it. And so like they're kind of, the people from the corporation are kind of finding out about this at the same time. And it's like, there's ramifications here, both, legal wise, like what happens with these people. And also just like, it gets into like a little bit of like multiverse stuff where it's just like, okay, so, this could be really helpful to people or to, a few up the food chain at this corporation. So that's kind of like the really interesting story stuff. But then at the same time, there's also just really cool sci-fi stuff in it. I specifically wanted to bring up this one moment, and I don't want to take up too much time on altars again, but
Go for it.
there's a really cool mechanic that I've never seen tackled in a game, and it's very uniquely designed to work with this game. So this game has a gameplay mechanic of time dilation, and essentially there's these rooms, I guess, with like, you know, there are like enemies in the game. They're very like abstract and like more so like gravity anomalies, and the way that they behave is how like they're like different enemies or whatever. But this one specifically is time dilation, and it'll be in like a localized space. And if you run into this space, your character moves slower, but the time of the day starts going faster. And so it's like if you are going through this area, you start wasting time, but there might be something here that you need to get through to like progress. So it's like it's a really interesting system, and they have all the other background systems to really make that make sense in the game. And then there is a way that you can, you know, take it out and everything that you discover. But it's like, I've never seen time dilation in that way expressed as a gameplay mechanic. And it's like the second, you know, I discovered it, because you walk in, it'll say like time dilation on the screen, and then the timer just starts like fastly going down. It's just like, oh my God, what's happening? So yeah, it's got the cool sci-fi stuff. It's got like, you know, interesting drama to it. And it also has like a very, just like everything is kind of interweaving in a very interesting and like mysterious way. So it's definitely a really unique game I'm coming around to on. I don't think it's perfect, obviously, like I've been talking about. Like I think it is a very stressful game. Like if you're looking for some kind of like chill sci-fi thing to kind of like zone out with, I don't think that this is the game for that. But if you're willing to put up with a bunch of different, like, with the management stuff or with paying attention and trying to balance a lot of things at the same time, and you're into the sci-fi stuff, I think it's a really unique and a really cool game in that way.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And also, for those of you who are listening, you know, in a timely manner, which of course you can be if you hit the subscribe button. They just recently announced, well, first of all, congratulations to 11-Bit Studios, because they just hit 280,000 copies sold on the altars across all platforms, along with a 1 million wish lists on Steam. But also, they've teamed up with Expedition 33. So you can, on Steam, get a bundle of both Expedition 33 and the altars for a discounted price.
Cool.
You know, which is a cool little thing. You know, the two of the two of at least at the very least the best rated games of the year so far, teaming up, making for a good value.
I also have one more thing that I forgot I wanted to mention.
Sure.
I believe the actor portraying Jan is also portraying all of the alternate versions of him. And I think he is a shoo-in for a nomination for Best Performance this year, because all of those different people, like the accent slightly changes and like they feel like distinct characters. So that's been a really interesting part as well.
I recommend checking out, I think on Instagram, or sorry, Twitter, I think is where he posted it. But yeah, it's essentially like on release day, he made a little video of just kind of like him, and then like his personas start coming in. Is pretty good. Yeah, it is played by the same person. And I've only seen kind of the brief trailers and previews, and it certainly, yeah, he did a great job. Now, let's shift to, actually, you know what? We'll stick with the sci-fi, because I have been playing Death Stranding 2. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I've been on the beach this long weekend.
I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. So,
oh man. So first of all, I should say that this is my very first Hideo Kojima game, and I've watched Death Stranding 1. Someone else play it on stream, but I've not been on controls with it, and so this is a very unique experience. and it's one that like here's the thing, right? I can't stop thinking about Death Stranding 2, and it's so many things that kind of are a factor of this. First of all, at a very base level, the story of Death Stranding 2 takes Sam, the character played by Norman Reedus, to at first Mexico to connect Mexico. And this is not really a spoiler because it's like I think episode 1 or 2 that this happens in. But while he's in Mexico, he discovers what's called a plate gate, and the plate gate essentially connects him to a different place, a different continent. At least that's all I'll say now for now, in case some people didn't know where else the story takes place. But that's where the majority of the story is connecting this other place. I'll maybe next episode I'll reveal the location, but yeah. So that's the general gist, and immediately having hands on with Death Stranding 2, having only watched Death Stranding 1, it's such a control heavy game. Like you have to press L2 and R2 to hold on to your straps, and then if you're stealthing, you have to like let go of R1, R2, and then hold R1 so that he can like clasp his own mouth and hold his breath. And it's just like the management of the luggage and all the bags and where they go and how readily they're accessible. It's a lot to manage, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel overwhelming. And once you get a hang of it, it's pretty intuitive after that. To the game's credit, I also think that the pacing of it in terms of mechanics and how they're rolled out is much smoother in terms of like specifically like the way upgrades and items and stuff like that are doled out to the player. So like at first it's this daunting task of like, oh shit, I have to go 700 meters, like okay, and then so you grab your bag and then you're kind of on your journey, but then you get the tricopter, it's the tricycle or the three-wheeled vehicle, the bike thing. You get that, and then like a little bit later you get the like a little truck, and then the truck can get upgrades, and then like the upgrades, like every time you get one of those upgrades, it's always like, oh shit, I can use this. Like it feels meaningful, which I think is very helps the experience kind of not feel like too stale. Also, look, there's a lot of jokes being said about the Strand type gameplay, but man, it is a unique kind of design that you don't experience anywhere else. Like the fact that I'm connecting to the network, and I see that like roads are being formed, and I'm like, holy shit, people are doing this. And then I'll be like out in the wild, and I'll see like a vehicle that someone left. I'm like, this is perfect. I just, and also part of that, like, is it inspires me to then also be like, you know what? I'll leave this here just in case someone else wants it, someone else needs it. This will be like a lucky charm for someone. And it kind of like is that nice kind of like positive interaction, which for someone who, I've played a lot of multiplayer games that are overtly multiplayer, and there's just so much like negativity around that. Like it's always competitive and negative of like, at the very least, if you lose, you're like, oh, get fucked, whatever. Like, this feels like, trying to be positive, and you can't really be negative either. With, in terms of like, you can't dislike anyone. You can only drop a like and kind of, move on. Stuff like that is really interesting. Also, there's three kind of big things left that I'll say kind of, about 15 hours in at this point. First of all, Kojima is pretty much just sharing his playlist. Like this is like Kojima's Spotify playlist, but like spread out over, 30, 40 hours. And they hit so goddamn nicely. It should not be understated that this is one of the best looking games I've ever played. And one of the things that really lends itself to that is like the shadows. Like you'll have these giant vistas or whatever, like mountains and stuff, but like each little like nook and cranny has like shadow, which adds a lot of depth and layer to just the visuals. And then so you'll be exploring to something. Usually the songs hit at like right as you're approaching the next kind of big landmark or whatever. And when they hit, you're just like, I honestly just stopped talking. I'm just like, I'm just like sitting there experiencing it, and the songs are genuinely awesome. Um, just really goddamn bangers. Um, and it really does introduce you to artists that I would have never otherwise discovered. There's a Mongolian artist named Magnolian who I like, would have not crossed my radar if not for the fact that Kojima put him in a game twice. I think there's two songs that I've heard so far, and also again, some of this might have been in Death Stranding 1 that I just don't remember or have didn't pick up on because I wasn't playing. But like when players build certain um kind of like shelters and stuff. Like if you build a timefall shelter in the game, you can actually attach like a song to it. And so like if you go up to that up to that shelter, the song will start playing nearby like as you're resting,
That's cool.
which I
I
think
don't
is like
think
a
that was
really
in the
nice.
first one.
Yeah, so that's a nice little addition. The second thing that I'll say is that this is it has such a unique blend or balance of like both cheese. There's a lot of, there's definitely cheese here in terms of like certain dialogue, and you're like, really? Okay. And then, like obviously like the characters, like the naming schemes. It happened in the first game, and he's sticking to it with the second one. There's a character called Rainy, for example, and it, for all, I'm not going to get into the spoilers of like what this character significance is. Really interesting backstory for this character and stuff. But like the introduction to this character is like the song like raindrops keep falling on my head. Like it's like that, and
Uh,
then it's like the character card says Rainy. I'm like, okay, I get it. But it balances that cheese with some really just like poignant little moments that I don't quite understand how it's done. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to analyze it from like just as a writer, like how are you saying some of the things that are so ridiculous on screen and having these actors really commit and deliver it, but then it doesn't somehow take away from the moments where it's like, oh shit, things are fucked up and like this is really dark. I just can't quite comprehend that balance that he's able to strike. And I say he, as Kojima Productions as a whole, because obviously it's a gigantic endeavor for a game of this scale.
mhm.
And yeah, I'm constantly like just really engaged despite the walking simulator aspect of the whole thing. And then the last thing I'll say, at least for now, again, 15 hours in, according to my PlayStation, that's about 40 something percent, like or like 40%, I'll say, of the game. I don't know how accurate that is, but it's built into PlayStation, so I'm guessing it's pretty accurate. But a few weeks ago, Nick and I had this conversation about AI in video games, and it's one of those things of like, how does, you know, and like obviously we said that like video games can't really be made by AI because they loses like intent or whatever. But this is one of those things where I really feel like AI can't really replicate this authentically because again that layer of cheese versus like the sincerity that the game manages to do is so difficult. But then as I said, I've been thinking about the game so much, and part of that is because this idea that is kind of like the question that is on the box art, right? It's like, should we have connected? And I find myself asking myself that more and more, not just like in terms of like obviously the game, but like just the internet, man. Like it's so much. It's both like incredible because you can talk to people that are all the way across the world, but you're also seeing shit that you don't need to hear, and how does that affect you? And it asks all these like interesting questions that like that's why I've been kind of thinking about the game so much recently, even when I'm not playing it. Like it's just kind of like constantly on top of my mind. So
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to playing more. It is a very unique experience. I'm glad that this was I'm glad I waited to get here.
I've got two things that I want to ask you.
Go for
One,
it.
uh, have you completely biffed it with a bag full of packages yet?
Have not. You know, I've got so close because like, you know, there's been times where I've been like super cocky and I'm like, you know, I'll see BTs, or, you know, in the like over, or, you know, in the distance, and I'll be like, ah, fuck, I'm on like a vehicle. They'll never catch me. And then all of a sudden they're fucking like, you know, like doom, 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 doom. And, you know, it really, it takes you by surprise. But I've managed to actually recover every time. So I've not fallen yet. Um, and you know what? I'll also add quickly, the game is a lot more like there's a lot more room for action here than like the first game. Like it's not simply just delivering packages. There's a lot like every few missions, you know, as you're crossing across this continent, the second continent, you'll have like camps of I believe they're called brigands, and you know, as you're mapping your course, you can it's entirely up to you if you want to tackle those camps and take them out. Which I think is like the game says like is negative. Like if you just leave them be, they'll get like stronger or something like that. Or you can just avoid them and chart around it, or just go through and actually tackle them. I've been going at them, and it's been really interesting. Of like, you know, actually trying to go for stealth and or just, you know, go for stealth, and then like one kill later, my cover's blown, and then I just start, you know. Anyway, I started firing. So anyway, yeah, a little bit more action. Go ahead. What's the second?
The second was actually going to be asking about the combat, because I know that in the previews and stuff, they were kind of like, yeah, there's going to be more of that in this game. I remember when I played the first game, it was like, I did it, but like it didn't really leave much of an impression on me that much. I do remember the like traversal of the environment more than like fighting the like weird raider people. So I was just curious, like what that part of the game was like, which you kind of touched on with that stuff already.
Yeah, much more action heavy, not overtly action, but like there is moments where I'm actively like you know, assessing an area. They also give you this thing that I'm not gonna, again, I'm gonna try to go avoid all spoilers for this, at least first part of the discussion, this episode. But like, there's a way that, again, I don't remember if the first game had it, but you can throw something out to kind of assess an area. Like you can like hover over the area, look at, you know, mark bad guys or points of interest that you want to tackle, and then you know, then you can go in knowing kind of the lay of the land. And again, it makes for pretty intense little encounters, especially because like if things pop off, you're not going to be, you'll be, you know, it won't be for your benefit. So kind of have to play it safe. So yeah, Death Stranding 2. Looking forward to seeing how it goes. Certainly, like I don't know where it'll rank once it's done. Like I'm hoping that the narrative kind of really lands its punches. But it's certainly like a game that I'll remember for a while because it's just like interesting things that have also been on top of my mind.
Nice.
Anyway, after that, I've also been playing that. So I've been pretty much playing Death Stranding 2 on stream, off stream. I've been playing Ruffy and the Riverside, and I have not finished it as of when we're recording this, but I have probably about 30 minutes to roll credits. So
Nice.
I will be doing it very quickly after this podcast is over. And so my full review will be up on respawnstation.com, and you can read it all there, you know, well written. But for now, the kind of the bullet points that I want to go over, and maybe some of it is reiterating of what I said last episode, is that it's a really fun 3D platformer. And, you know, the story, again, goes that you are Ruffy, who is, quote unquote, the chosen one. When this dark force essentially destroys the town sign and also damages the world core, you have to save Riverside by finding all the letters for the sign. And that's pretty much the gist of the adventure. And let me just say this, right? The game is said to be about 8 hours long. How Long to Beat says I think it's about 8 or 9 hours long. I'm like 14 hours into this thing, and you know, that's definitely part of that is like I'm having fun with it, right? Like I'm going in and I'm purposefully kind of going off the beaten path, doing weird puzzles here and there, and the environmental puzzles that you just kind of like stumble upon are really just kind of like fun to just experiment with. Like this is a random one. I won't ruin all of them, like because there's like certain ways to solve different environmental puzzles that you can kind of repeat. But this one like caught me by surprise where I was just in this area and there's this, a big mushroom and then there's like a bunch of smaller mushrooms kind of grouped around the area. And this happens like frequently. You'll see this kind of like in almost every major location of the game. But just honestly, you could ask me why. I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, let me copy the color of the big mushroom and then just like apply it to the mushrooms by its by its roots. And as soon as I did, there's like three mushrooms down there. I highlighted them and swapped their colors, and then all of a sudden, a little pop thing popped up on the top of my right hand corner. It's like 3 out of 15. I was like, huh, what? And then so I went around and I found other mushrooms and I was like, changed them to the same color as the big mushroom. And as I did, it goes 6 out of 15, 9 out of 15. And then, you get 15 out of 15 and you get a collectible. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was, the game doesn't communicate this with you, but it's just like, oh, that's like a fun thing I've just discovered organically while I was playing. Yeah, so stuff like that has been, it's like the most satisfying part of the game. I also just generally enjoy the vibe of the game. The menu screen theme music is great. It's also the theme music that plays when you're on a bale of hay, which is how you can like ride around. Like you can run or walk, or you can hop on a bale and then like ride the bale of hay around.
Nice, that's fun.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's been like it adds a little bit of change of pace, and also the bale of hay is more of like a halfway into the game unlock that you can then also access additional areas. And speaking of, there's a main kind of hub area that you can explore and kind of mess around in. And then as you're playing, to get each letter, you have to go to a different offshoot of an area. And, to get there, you have to do a little puzzle, which is sort of like it'd be a little reductive to say that it's just like it's like a Zelda puzzle type of thing. It's not that intense or like serious. It's literally just like you go in, there's one thing in front of you and you have to like figure out, okay, I have to put, what order you have to arrange the blocks in order to get the ball into the hole.
Sure.
And that's about it. It's not too crazy, but it's enough of a brain teaser to be like, okay, I think this is how it works, and then figure it out. So all that said, the world is full of little distractions that I really like. And the swap ability that you're using is not like limitless in its powers, but it's like just enough to be interesting. You can swap colors of things. You can swap like the like between wood, stone, metal, or like water. I think like you can kind of play around with that and solve things that way. And also if you want, you can also pay off like as you're collecting coins and stuff. You can use those to pay off the puzzles. If you don't want to do certain puzzles, you can literally there's like an NPC nearby and you can just pay them like 50 coins to just like give you the answer to. But that being said, there are a few little negatives that I think kind of knock it down a little bit for me in terms of so first of all, the boss fights. There's only like 2 or 3 boss fights in the whole game, and they're all in the later half of the game, and they're really underwhelming. Like just like I mean, there's no like real difficulty to it in the first place. Everything's pretty accessible, but it's just like really like it's almost like you do the same thing over and over again for like 4 times in order to kill a boss, and it's like okay, it's a little underwhelming. And then also I feel like maybe if I was like speed running this game and I did finish in 8 hours, I might not feel this way. But currently, I feel like the story is a little bit too undercooked. It doesn't feel like there's enough narrative weight to really pull me in. I'm not asking for like a the Last of Us, like what the hell, like that kind of thing. Ruffy kills the doctor, like I'm not expecting that kind of thing, but it just feels like very by the books of like every story beat just feels safe. There's not a lot of
Sure.
risk. There are some kind of interesting moments, but by and large, it definitely feels like a team that's like, hey, we know that these things work because we love this genre and we know what's functional. Let's just stick to it. And I would have loved to see them kind of maybe play a little bit more risky, take a few more kind of bigger swings, and obviously some of them would miss, some of them would land, but it'll be, I think, a lot more memorable that way. But again, that being said, I'm not gonna lock in my score, but at the very least, like I think kind of it lands in that 7 to 8 range for me, leaning more towards 8 out of 10, just because like it's still a fun time, and there's a reason I've put 15 hours into it, and the last 2 hours maybe a little bit tedious, but overall, I'd recommend it.
One thing that I find funny, I've been guilty of this, and it just popped into my head when you were describing it. But like, I sometimes get an out of body experience when I realize something that I'm talking about with a game, and like specifically, it's like the narrative impact and stakes. But then you look at Ruffy, and it's just like this little cartoon bear thing, and it's just like you just sit there and you think about it. And it's just like, what am I talking about? Like it's like, but like I've been there with so many other games where it's just like, yeah, you know what, Tony Hawk, like why is he grinding on a pinball machine? Like it's just like, you know what, they're having fun. So
Yeah,
but no,
yeah,
I totally get
yeah.
what you mean on wanting a bit more out of a thing that's playing the hits a little bit too much.
Yeah, yeah. But again, if you like 3D platformers, it's an easy one to recommend, because it's just like it's a good time. It's a good time. Now, I am. Let's see. I'll quickly say this. There's two games that I've been playing a little bit. So first of all, Nick, I'm proud to say, as a host of the Respawn Station podcast, I have to be playing the best, the latest games. So I did in fact play Splitgate 2. Is that what's it called? Splitgate 2?
Yes, I believe that is the
Um,
game.
Man, did not like it. I uninstalled it already, actually. It did not. I don't know, man. I really like the first one. I actually played quite a bit of the first one. But I played this, and you would think that having played the first one, I would be like fully understanding of what's going on here. I played the battle royale, and somehow like I was so fucking confused, and then somehow I ended up winning, and I was like, okay, cool, I guess. And then like I play some of the other game modes, and it just doesn't have the same. Like I think it's missing the arena shooter esque aspect of the game, and it's trying to be more of like that heavy, like a bigger first person shooter type of thing. I
I
don't know
was
if I'm
gonna say,
saying that
is it
correctly.
missing like, because I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but as an outsider who hasn't played any of these games, it kind of felt like Splitgate 1 had a bit more of that indie spark to it, whereas Splitgate 2
Yeah,
is kind of like, okay, the corporate money came in. Like, is that what
yeah.
it is?
It's like I think there's definitely like a part of Splitgate 1 where it was almost like an unsaid thing where it definitely felt like it was doing Halo, but it had portals and it was just like it was punching above its weight and it was interesting. Whereas I feel like Splitgate 2, it's like, yeah, we're the big leagues now, and then it just like the gameplay, the core gameplay is fine. Like the shooting mechanics are fine, but everything around it, I just feel really is underwhelming. Like the maps, I don't really care for, and yeah, it was just it wasn't. I did not have my great time with it.
One
So
specific difference that I noticed is just that for Splitgate 1, the only way that I heard about that was from word of mouth. Like, I didn't see anything really about that game. And now it's like,
sure.
once I started seeing, like, Splitgate 2, oh, join the beta now, like, stuff like that, I was like, that was, like, the first kind of difference I picked up on, where it's like, okay, like, they definitely got more money this time to put this one
And
together.
I think that was a whole, again, feel free to correct me in the comments about this, but I believe that's the story, right? Like, it was, they made Splitgate 1. It did kind of word of mouth helped it grow. I mean, I heard about it from people who played it and were like, hey, dude, you should check this out. And I think that's how it initially grew, and it grew enough to catch some investors' eyes. And then because of that, they essentially took down the first game and said, "Hey, we're gonna make a bigger and better second game." And look, I'm not even taking into account all the drama and bullshit with this game, right? Like, like the make FPS great again on the stage, or the like the battle pass that was like something like $40 or something, and then they ended up like the director of the game or whatever was like, "Oh, I don't know how that happened." Like all that stuff. I'm not looking at that when I'm talking about this game. I'm just talking about the 2 hours or so I've experienced with the game left me underwhelmed. And yeah, I will not be going back to it, at least for the foreseeable future, unless, again, word of mouth sparks, interest again. The other game, which we'll actually get into a little bit, we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the main topic, is Anthem. Because look, Anthem's going away, and I decided that before it's lost media, that I would at least, try to play through it. I did not, like Austin, pay $70 for this game when it came out.
Call him out.
Yeah, I just downloaded it on Game Pass, and that's how I'm playing through it right now. But about 2 hours in, and there's only two real impressions I have of this game right now. Right, the first one is that the flying and the kind of general controls of the flight mechanics are surprisingly good. Like they hold up, and they don't feel. It's one of those weird things where I don't blame the game if anything goes wrong. I feel like the control is really in my hands for that stuff, which is a compliment. The second thing though, the story sucks. It is not a good story, and so like they really like. I'm trying to focus, but like I just cannot get into it. So I think at the end of the 2 hours, it was like, all right, I've given up on the plot line. I'm just gonna play with friends and have a good time. So
I gotta make this very clear to you real quick, because
okay.
Your first BioWare, I believe, experience was with Dragon Age Origins, and that historically did not go down well. Now we're going into Anthem. I don't think we're going to be ending very positive on that. Please don't count out Mass Effect. I do think Mass Effect is good, and I recently was thinking about a replay of Mass Effect, but I was like, there's so many other things that I got to play that I can't do it right now. But
yeah, I need to find like an off-season, because
at some point.
I do have the Legendary... Is that what's called the Legendary Edition? I do have that, and I'm looking for like an off season where like things quiet down a little bit, where I can kind of at least get through like one Mass Effect game, because I've never played one of those. But of course, I think I have to start with Andromeda, right? Like naturally, that's just the way to go.
That would be
my track record.
I'm going to start with the new one first.
But no, so there you go. That's what we've been playing. But now, Nick, do you, let's check in with you for a brief update.
Yeah. So I don't know. It wasn't last week, right?
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago. We started talking about Action Game Maker. We got like a little code for that, and how we wanted to kind of workshop a video game. Listeners may remember, or if you weren't here for that episode, we decided on a atmospheric 2D shooter loosely based on the movie 65, starring Adam Driver, where it's some alien soldier person that crash lands on prehistoric Earth and fights dinosaurs. Essentially, there's just some minor updates to that currently. I thought about it a little bit, so like I have like a loose idea of like a level or two that I would like to create. I had an idea for like a cutscene or something. I don't know if I have the skills to pull this off, but this is where we're at currently. Where it's a person frozen in a comet that crash lands onto the planet. And I feel like that is like a very atmospheric, mysterious kind of thing. They like, come out of the crater. I was going to say the hole in the ground. That's not it. The crater. And, goes and shoots some dinosaurs and everything like that. I did get a little bit of hands-on time with Action Game Maker. Not really enough to like talk about it and like our impressions and everything. Sure. But I was following along with some of their opening tutorials and stuff. And I can say, thanks to their tutorials, that we do have a character that moves and can shoot a gun.
Whoa! And shoot a gun. Oh,
we're already part way there to realizing the vision. Those kind of processes and stuff, I really was kind of, following a tutorial, so a lot of that's not really like baked into my head. Like, if you were like, okay, now replicate it from scratch, like I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
But at least with the tutorials that they have in place and the tools that they have, already partially on the way to being able to do this.
Right.
So
is this like, like once you get things in, can you just like hit the play button and then like test it out immediately?
Yeah, so
okay.
you can specifically place like different tile sets, and the tile sets have different textures and everything for different types of ground. So you can literally just like drag and drop and paint on like level geometry
nice.
and stuff. I was able to place like a bounce pad and like a end level goal flag kind of thing. So they have like little preset items, at least in like the tutorial file and stuff, that you're able to place into the world. They have like pre-made enemies and stuff like that. And then as long as there's no like errors or anything, you can just hit the play button and it'll boot up in a window and let you control stuff. So the character can move left and right. You can jump. We coded in like a little slide move. So it seems like the stuff that you would want to have there, just as like a bare bones kind of game making thing for an action game. It's like, okay, well, I put in like an hour and a half and I already have a character that I can control around and stuff. Again, I wasn't building it from scratch, so that's like a bit of a different story if I were building it up from scratch. But it's definitely encouraging seeing the progress already to be like, okay, like I think I can realistically get like a level made for this. So
now you just got to make sure that like scope creep doesn't come in and you're like that's a little bit in and you're like, hold on, what about 15 levels instead? What
I shit you not, on my document that I made when I was just brainstorming, I already put 3 levels and 3 different enemies, and it's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to match that. So I'll be happy if I can get one enemy with a custom, model and everything in there. But it's funny how those things happen. You kind of understand why AAA games take a decade to make sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's also an interesting thing of like this, and I guess this kind of goes off the idea of like, like Hideo Kojima, right? Is that you don't see a lot of game makers be the front, and like, in a movie, right? Like you'll go to see a movie and the movie will say, a Christopher Nolan film, and or like a Spike Lee joint, and you're like, oh, this is an auteur is making this thing. Video games surprisingly don't have that, and obviously Kojima is one of the rarer kind of rarefied ones, but then there's also like, the Undertale guy, like Toby Fox, right? And then Concerned Ape, I forget the name.
It's kind of funny because like I've thought about that too, and I think it's just like a little bit different for games. I feel like the studio is where it gets that, because like you see like a From Software logo and that's what gets the people excited, not necessarily Miyazaki, even though I think he kind of fits the same bill as like a Kojima, but like
I think he's up there now.
Studios, Machine Games, Sony Santa Monica, like it's like the company logo that takes that kind of emphasis.
And what's interesting is like there was a period of time when games were doing that, and I don't know if it's necessarily the idea that like games, the production of games started getting so big that they're like, we can't possibly just have one person's name as this, like under this. Maybe it's also like the fact that in a in a movie set, right? It's like the director is often the person going like, yeah, let's take that and to cut that, and like kind of their hands are all over it. Whereas like with a video game, because it's all from scratch, every person's kind of like in charge of their own little aspect, going in. It would make sense maybe, obviously, if you're looking at like Concerned Ape making Stardew Valley and Haunted Chocolatier or whatever, it would be like, okay, that it makes sense because it's almost like a solo developer making that, and that is very much so like an intentional auteur making their game. But like, especially like Hideo Kojima making like, with hundreds of people under his belt, being like a Hideo Kojima game, it's a little bit different. But I don't know. I'm curious because it's like very few people have that auteur name behind them. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. We have to bring it back. When we put out this game, we haven't named it yet. We'll have a Nick Sivak game
It's the one
on
thing
the
I've
cover.
been concerned with because it's like we've criticized names so much. It's like this has to be rock solid whenever we come up with a name. Like
It's called Untitled Project 7 is what it's going to be called. But speaking of auteur games, Romero Games. If you don't know John Romero, well, as another point in case to what we were saying, John Romero is one of the original creators of Doom, and he's currently has his own studio called Romero Games Limited. That is a Galloway-based studio that's focused on making first-person shooter games. Last week, we obviously had the big news that Microsoft was laying off a bunch of people, and
real quick, we should
part of that.
also mention. I think it's co-led with his wife Brenda. She's
Okay.
very heavily involved with this stuff too. So
Okay. No, that's fair. So Microsoft's going through the whole thing, and there's definitely like there's a lot of updates to this whole story since we've last talked about it last week. And most of it is like, oh, and then this studio was also affected, and this game was potentially also shut down. For now, again, this episode's all about Kojima. Apparently, OD seems to have survived the cuts, so that's cool. But like again, some of the things that I find so heartbreaking about it is like some of the developers were like, yeah, like they met with us like last month and looked at our game, said it was great, and then here they are like shutting us down and stuff like that. So we're not gonna get into all that, but I have a little bit of a feel good story for you guys because Romero, hopefully feel good. Romero Games shared yesterday or 2 days ago that obviously the shutdown happened and people were wondering what the status of the company was. And they said, quote, "We want to address the recent reports regarding the status of Romero Games. These reports have contained inaccuracies and we feel it's important to set the record straight. Point 1, the funding for our project was pulled and our game was canceled. 2, due to confidentiality agreements, we cannot disclose the publisher's identity, though some may infer it from public information." Take a guess. 3, as a result, we now have to reassess the entire staffing of our studio. 4, Romero Games is not closed, and we are doing everything in our power to ensure that it does not come to that. Any suggestion otherwise is fatally incorrect. Indeed, we are in the studio today to discuss next steps with the team. And lastly, we've been contacted by several publishers interested in helping us bring the game across the finish line, and we're currently evaluating these opportunities. We appreciate the outpouring of support, and we'll share further updates as we are available. And it's part of like the stink that now Xbox has with it, right? Like as Xbox kind of like goes around mucking things up, there's occasionally little pearls that come up that are entirely independent of actually Microsoft and Xbox, right? Like last year, we've talked about it before. It's the jobs cut, the layoffs happened, and how do I forget their name every goddamn time, dude? What's
Tango,
that studio called?
for Hi-Fi?
Tango.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Tango was shut down, and then it turns out that they were actually, they were able to buy that and the IP back, and presumably they're working on a sequel. Here we have a similar story, hopefully, where they're shopping around the idea. It's not entirely like the hope's not all gone, but for a lot of for some teams are entirely wiped out. Like Forza Motorsport team was entirely wiped out, which by the way, absolutely crazy. Like I'm guessing they're focusing mainly on Horizon at this point for Forza, but like, God, like that's a flagship Xbox title. It's wild times with Microsoft. At this point, all those, man, I hate to say it because like there's so many of this discussion of like console gamers are like, yeah, Xbox should buy everything and make every all the games exclusive, and then we'll see how PlayStation likes it. And it's like it's not about PlayStation versus Xbox. It's about the livelihoods of these fucking developers that are like putting in their hearts and souls into these games, and then all of a sudden they're having the rug pulled out from under them. So
Hmm.
yeah, it sucks that we have to look for the silver lining, but hey, at least there is something that we can point to.
Yeah, the one thing about the statement that confused me, I guess it is just a matter of like buying the rights to whatever they're working on. But it was like they made in the first point, they said that the game was canceled,
Was
and
canceled.
then
Yeah.
having other publishers come through to get it across the finish line. It's like, how does that work? Like, is that like part of
Yeah.
the negotiation where it's like, okay, Xbox, we're just buying everything that you were overseeing, and then we can revive that or not? Like, it's
They just
a bit of a weird thing.
they changed the
there,
name
but
of it, like the IP is different, but it's the same game.
yeah, that was a bit weird, but I certainly
Yeah.
do hope that somebody does come along, because I am very intrigued about that project. Like, all you really have to go on is that it's them making a new shooter, and it's like, that sounds like it could be cool. At the same time, let's not forget Daikatana. So,
Yes, yes. But you know what? We'll kind of keep rolling with the Xbox stuff a little bit, because again, this is like a very tumultuous time in terms of like just the general Xbox ecosystem, right? So first of all, there's this a lot of talk about Game Pass. We've talked about before how Game Pass is, as a consumer, one of the best deals in gaming because you get a lot out of it. You put in a monthly price, and even if you're not subscribed to it like 100% of the time, you can pay. I don't know what it is now, like $22 or something, and you get to play Doom: The Dark Ages, day one, day and date, for example.
mhm.
Um, and so this is one of the kind of recent developments that I saw, which is essentially there's been a lot of talk about Game Pass and its viability. There's this idea that essentially if Game Pass isn't so Game Pass has been said to be profitable, right? Like, oh, it's like a success, it's profiting. But apparently that wasn't exactly the truth. It's actually more so that Game Pass was succeeding, well, was profiting, not including first party titles. So that's mainly, I guess, like talking about acquisitions and stuff like that, not the costs of making a Oblivion remastered or Doom: The Dark Ages, or one of these kind of tentpole releases, which are the reason why a lot of people are getting, those are the reasons why people are getting Game Pass, and then like finding out Expedition 33 is like, oh, the gem, like, oh wait, this also exists. Like Blueprints is also on Game Pass. I can check it out. For the most part, I'm not saying no one's subscribing for these games. But yeah, so the Game Pass, not as lucrative as we once thought. And so the former founder of Arcane Studios and the publishing director of Alarian essentially were talking on Twitter about Xbox Game Pass. So Raphael said, why is no one talking about the elephant in the room, cough, cough, Game Pass? And then someone asks, as a developer, what are your thoughts on Game Pass? And Raphael says, I think Game Pass is an unsustainable model that has that has been increasingly damaging the industry for a decade, subsidizing by Microsoft's infinite money, but at some point, subsidized by Microsoft's infinite money, but at some point, reality has to hit. I don't think Game Pass can coexist with other models. They'll either kill everyone else or give up. And then, publishing director Ilarian says, quote, what happens when all that money runs out is the most vocal concern in my network, and one of the main economic reasons people I know haven't shifted to its business model. The infinite money thing never made any sense. And Raphael responds, I agree, and I'm fed up with all the bullshit. Well, he said BS. I'm expanding the words. They fed us at first like, don't worry, it doesn't impact the sales, only to admit years later that it totally does. No shit, it does, really. And then to follow up on the cannibalization of sales, they said apparently, we aren't saying that. The economics never made sense, but at the same time, I do recognize that for smaller teams, the new or riskier IPs, it helped de-risk a little bit. Much prefer Sony's lifecycle management strategy. And then again, this is not about console bullshit. Okay, I'm just going to get that out of the air. And then finally, Raphael says, yeah, the only way the Game Pass can coexist without hurting everyone else is for the back catalog. And yeah, so interesting discussion between two, people who are at least in the loop a little bit regarding
Hmm.
the games industry and the current state of things. I thought that was an interesting perspective to throw in there. Do you have, kind of what are your reactions? I don't know if you knew about read that already.
I read it before we started recording. Yeah, I think it's two interesting points. It is also, I read it and it's just like, okay, well, Larian is also really outspoken about like the way that they do things and how, other companies do things. And so like that doesn't really particularly surprise me that might be like, a concern or a talking point with them. Um Also like with something like the background of Arcane, I know Raphael, he is the head of Wolfeye Studios that did Weird West with Devolver Digital. And so it's like
Yep.
that, like I can understand that scale of game is also probably like, speaking about Arcane's other stuff, like a Dishonored or, things like that.
Right.
I think that is a trickier game also, though, like in this, mix up of things when talking about like Game Pass and like viability of products and how it would cannibalize sales and stuff like that. I think you probably would see a much more negative kind of return on sales for those types of games versus, it's going to sound obvious, but like a Call of Duty or like a, a Starfield, something like that.
Right.
At the same time, also, though, it's like, it's kind of funny because it's like, for months now, we've been like, okay, you can't trust what Xbox says because they said all these games were great and that they closed them down. And then it's like, well, yeah, naturally, of course, you probably can't trust them when they're saying, oh, Game Pass is great. Like,
Yep. Now, final thing regarding consoles specifically, I think, right? This is the final thing about consoles. Yeah, sure. This is just kind of a general update from the May 2025 report from Circana, and it kind of gives you a little bit of stats on games here in the United States. So, first of all, year-on-year total spending increased by 1%. 1%. By the way, shout out to Shinobi on Twitter for this. He's kind of aggregated this for us. Elden Ring Night Rain was the number one selling game, followed by Doom: The Dark Ages and Forza Horizon 5. Shout out Night Rain. Go back to a few episodes, and you'll hear us yapping about that almost every episode, I think. PS5 sales increased 5% year over year, and was the top selling console. Switch was number two, and Xbox was number three. In fact, Xbox sales for Xbox Series X and S dropped 30%. Nintendo Switch sales dropped 44%. Keep that in mind that, obviously the elephant in the room is that the Switch 2's out, so obviously it naturally would fall off for the Switch.
Also, I believe Xbox price increases were that month also. So that probably had an impact on those as well.
Yeah. And I don't know, and while we're saying it, I think PlayStation had their Days of Play thing, which was like a discounted thing for consoles as well. I don't know if that necessarily impacted this, but for the PS5, the console split was 51% disc and 49% digital, which I find very interesting because goddamn, we're the physical media people are hanging on by a percent. This is what Bernie Sanders was talking about when he said the 1%.
Well, Sony's also obfuscating that because it's like the PS5 Pro, like you can't buy a disc version of that. Like the disc drive you can buy, but like they don't have a SKU for that. So it's like, that gap is getting tinier now, but it's because you're taking away the options, not necessarily because it's changing.
Xbox, totally radical, but it's all like, in terms of comparison of the stats, but also makes sense. 21% disc, 79% digital. The big factor here is that Xbox Series S is a cheaper console. I know there's also a disc-less version of the Xbox Series X. I think it's like the all-white version or whatever. But like that's the high end. That probably isn't accounting for many of these sales. It's mainly the fact that Xbox Series S is a much cheaper console to just generally pick up. Subscription spending reached all-time monthly high at $600 million. The PS5 DualSense Midnight Black controller was the top-selling accessory. And then finally, a little addition here is that Star Wars Battlefront 2 jumped to number 5 in bestsellers on PC, obviously following Andor Season 2 being a huge success, including myself. I didn't play on PC, but I was one of the people that jumped into Battlefront 2.
Yeah, that's always crazy when they pull those like stat increases. Sometimes they get crazy where it's like back when Fallout came out, there was some that were like ranked like 450th and went up into like the top 15. Like it's crazy.
Dude, here's the thing, sometimes look, Nick and I are pretty much on top of most gaming news because like that's kind of like what we do. At the very least, we have to be on top of it because of just presenting things for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I like completely didn't hit my radar. So Nick last year on I think season 0 of the podcast, you can also read his review on respawnstation.com for Another Crab's Treasure. And then I played a game called Going Under as well, but that's not on podcast or anything. That was a long time ago. But that game, both those games were by Aggro Crab. Did you hear about their new game?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Another Crab's Treasure came out last year, and they've already put out another game, and it's called Peak, and it's out now, and it is
I've heard people saying Peak is really good.
Yeah, so and in fact, it actually, as of 2 days ago, hit an all-time peak of let's see, all-time peak of 114,492 concurrent players on Steam. That's fucking crazy.
Nice.
For an indie game. And I wish not this team nothing but the best. This game came out on June 16th, 2025, and yeah, I'm happy for them because that's crazy numbers that they're pulling here. So yeah, just want to throw it out there. Congratulations.
Play Another Crab's Treasure
all right,
too.
Nick.
That game was great. I love that game.
Yes. Yeah. All right. What else what do you want to hit here?
I just threw in a couple quick ones. Helldivers 2 is coming to Xbox. That was kind of surprising.
I think it's the same time as another game, Gears of War. I think it's the same time Gears of War is coming out to PlayStation, which is fun. And then also today they announced that Stalker 2 is coming to PlayStation as well. So another Xbox exclusive that's coming to PlayStation.
I do want to give a shout out real quick. Both you and I are fans of Kyle Bossman, and his most recent delayed input was right after the Xbox layoffs, and then they announced Helldivers, and his opener was, I think now's the right time to tell people Helldivers is coming to Xbox. That was perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a thing. Cyberpunk Edge Runners 2 is in development, so at Studio Trigger.
I'm gonna edge to this for sure. This is great news.
Yeah, both you and I really enjoyed that, so that'll be cool to see that there's more coming down the road for that.
Not connected, by the way, or not connected as like it's not the same characters as the first one. So don't hope for any resurrections.
Right. And then this I thought was interesting. A little bit of Last of Us news here. They put out a free update for Last of Us Part 2 called Chronological Mode, where instead of playing as like Ellie's story and then Abby's story, the events happen chronologically. So I guess you would flip back and forth throughout the game.
Yes. Yeah.
They also added some Uncharted skins for the no return mode I saw. And then also tangentially related, Neil Druckmann announced that he is stepping away from the HBO series to focus on future projects at Naughty Dog. So
galactic. Yes. I will quickly just add on that it's actually not just The Last of Us Part 2. It's only The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, specifically, that the chronological thing is up. I know that's a difference because they might not look crazy different, but they are different games. And so, yeah, that's...
yeah, no, that's a good correction.
But no, it would be interesting to revisit it in chronological order. I feel like that would be sort of a meaningful way to kind of re-examine the way that things happen in that game, because it really does jump around. But yeah, wasn't expecting that. I feel like somehow they always manage to keep Last of Us. It's really running that fucking studio, and you know what? More power to them. Just keep running that thing until you get the next one comes out.
And I think with the TV series, real quick, I know you specifically haven't seen season 2. I saw like half of it, and then my HBO ran out, and then I was like, I don't really care as much.
I thought you just gave up. You're like,
I saw like bits and pieces of like the remaining episodes through like reactions and stuff like that. I do think, I don't know how much of this is like the general consensus, but for me specifically, I thought that the episodes of season 2 that Neil had a more direct hand in slash directed, I thought those were the better episodes of the season. So you take that with how you will. I mean, maybe it's just because, the guy was partially responsible for creating the characters, so he kind of knows how to tell the stories better. But
Sure.
like, we're jumping into the logical season 3 starting point, and also we're not having. I believe it's Haley, someone from Naughty Dog, also that was working on the show. I think she also
Grossman?
is not. Maybe. I think she's also not coming on for season 3 again. So like,
I feel like that does not bode well. Just at the very base level, that like as the show is going into uncharted, like unscripted territory, that it's like they're like, yeah, we'll let them do that. Like, it felt like they were on board for the stuff that they knew that like, hey, we've already ran the playbook on this. We know what this is. But now it's like, okay, well, I'd let them figure this out.
But on the flip side, like you mentioned, looking a little bit better for Intergalactic if they're not going to be splitting between multiple projects and stuff. So,
yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that game. I hope we get to see some more sooner rather than later.
I agree. That was a great reveal trailer. Yeah, it was one that caught me by surprise. And then last little story here, just throwing it in there at the end. Don't have much to say about it, but Aniplex, Joy City, and Capcom have announced Resident Evil Survival Unit. It's a mobile strategy game. If you were, looking for something in between now and actually, is this out yet? No, it's just a tease. I don't know if there's actual release date on this yet. Oh, there's actually okay. So as of when we're recording this. So the website for the game, Survival Horror Strategy Survival Unit, I mean, has a countdown timer for 19 and a half hours. And it says official announcement YouTube premiere on July 10th, 3 p.m. So there you go. That's when you'll maybe get to see this game in action. But until then, we don't really know when it's coming out or anything.
You gotta love Capcom and their
countdown websites
approach to Resident Evil specifically.
Oh, sure.
We get Resident Evil Requiem. Here, have your side of mobile game too with it.
Yeah, or like, what was the one that came out with? Is also called Survivor or something, right? Survival.
I mean, Survivor is on the PS1. There's There's Umbrella Corps, which was like a multiplayer version at one point.
Yeah.
I think. Are you talking about the one that came with the Resident Evil 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, I think you're right. It's something along those lines, like Survivors or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. While we think about what this mystery Resident Evil mode is called, why don't you listen to this little ad break? And we're back. And fun fact, that little bonus mode in Resident Evil 3 was called Resident Evil Resistance. So now you know. I can use that as a fun fact. Tell your friends and family about Resident Evil Resistance, a game that I don't think survived as long as a T-virus. But with that said,
which is a great segue into what we're talking about.
It's time to talk about things not surviving. Specifically games not surviving. The main topic of this episode is stop killing games. And I'm going to say this right off the bat, right at the top, all right? There's been a lot of controversy around this regarding, like who said what and like false accusations, and people got swatted over this. Like it's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of drama. And if you know us, we don't really care for that shit. So we're not going to talk about that. Instead, we want to actually talk about Stop Killing Games specifically. Uh, so here's the thing. First of all, this has become an increasingly troubling fact that games are getting shut down more and more. And especially now, what we're seeing is, games that are or were designed as live service games or always online games that when they're shut down, the servers go down and it's just everything's gone, right? Like you can't play it, you can't access it, or nothing. Some recent announcements that kind of are at the top of mind regarding this. There was The Crew from Ubisoft that obviously went completely offline. I believe it came out like 2015 or something like that. As we said earlier in this episode, Anthem is officially the countdown clock has began for that game going offline at the start of 2026, which is exactly why I'm playing it now, just to kind of get my hands on it before it becomes lost media. What else? I know there's another big one that just recently also got bit the bullet. And all that to say, it really sucks, and that's part of the reason why this specific movement, the Stop Killing Games movement, was created. And I'm not going to quote the website here, just to give you kind of like information straight from the horse's mouth, so to say. And then we can kind of maybe talk a little bit more about, our own opinions about this and where we come into it. So, quote, Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. An increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no stated expiration date, but designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. This practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. Furthermore, the legality of this practice is largely untested in many countries. Over the past year, we have successfully escalated complaints on this problem to consumer agencies in France, Germany, and Australia, and we have brought forth petitions for new law on this problem to various countries. A list of the actions taken can be viewed here on the website. As of 2025, most consumer action on this matter has concluded, and we are awaiting decisions on it from several governments. So that's the current state of things. Nick, take it away, man. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah. I believe that this is, at least based on, the synopsis here that you gave us, I believe that this is, a worthwhile cause to, pursue, essentially, for the industry going forward. I think it's because, shout out to Start Screen Gallery again. I was going through and installing a bunch of games to get start screens for our new Instagram, and I directly ran into something like this where I had an old PS4 game called Drawn to Death. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game, but that was
yeah.
I think it might have been from like David Jaffe or something like that, and it had like this like sketchbook kind of art style, and I was like, I don't feel like anybody talks about that game. Like I'll try
picture it,
installing that and getting that one. And before even getting to a title screen, I was just met with a error pop-up code that it couldn't connect to servers, and no matter what you do, it would just refresh that page. So, and like I think specifically the part about this that has the strongest case to be made is the fact that these are like sold to people, and like it's weird because it's like, you could have an argument where you're like, I paid money for this, like I should at least be able to access some part of this game, for the foreseeable future. The thing that gets a bit tricky is like, well, all these companies obviously in those EULAs that are, 5 million paragraphs long probably has somewhere in there it's like, yeah, if you want to play the game, you're okay with us, terminating access at any point. Like, so I think it's a worthwhile cause to get behind and will actually benefit like things like preservation like they mentioned. I think that would go a long way. And I think it's just like, a thing that should be a part of, the gaming sphere, I guess, is how I'll phrase that. Like, that should realistically be something that, like, should be a standard practice. It's like, if you're gonna pull the plug on it, at least, like, allow somebody to, like, run around an empty level or something like that. Like, you don't have to, like, completely make it like this whole transformative experience when you're trying to, lock the door up for the final time.
Yeah, and there's also, again, our goal here is to give you as many kind of angles at this as possible, so you kind of understand why Stop Killing Games, and just kind of this idea, at the very least, is significant, right? Now, Ubisoft is by no means the only company that does this, but for the sake of this specific example, that's what we're going to use. So you can go to Ubisoft's website and you can look up their user agreement. And point 8, termination. I'm going to quote this specifically. So, quote, this, I don't know, EULA. Is there a word for that? Like, is there like a way to say that, or just say EULA? Anyway, this EULA will terminate automatically if you fail to comply with any of the terms and conditions of this EULA. This is the big part. Quote, upon termination for any reason, you must immediately uninstall the product and destroy all copies of the product in your possession. Unquote. That's a huge one. And again, like I said, Ubisoft's not the only one that does this, but it's like a really weird, shitty practice to kind of put out there in the first place. Just to have games be fucking destroyed if I guess you break the terms and conditions. Now, the
Ubisoft one is funny though. It's just like, oh, they're never gonna pursue anybody for that, right? It's just like, I don't have to go and. Unfortunately, I don't believe that there is a disc, but it's like I don't have to go destroy my disc for X Defiant, right? So it's just like,
don't fucking rub it in my face, dude. What the hell? Yes. So look, there's that as an extreme example for sure, as well. But Ubisoft has been kind of notorious at this in suggesting that like you don't own your games, you're kind of just like buying the license for it, and so that way they can delist a game like The Crew and kind of not have it be a big issue. There's a lot of games that get kind of shut down, and because, again, what I was saying was that because they're either a multiplayer in some nature or that they're designed to be a live service game, which has been obviously a big trend in the industry with everything kind of being like, hey, we got to keep people hooked, we got to keep, get them coming back so they can fish every day, so they try to keep you keep updating it, throw a battle pass in there, etc., to hook you. No fish pun intended. So this is actually an article from December 29th, 2023 from PC Gamer. But I thought that, again, 2023, a little outdated, but it gives you an idea. So these are all the big games that shut down in 2023. All right. First off, Spellbreak was shut down on January 10th, 2023. Rumbleverse was shut down February 28th. Babylon's Fall was shut down on February 27th, which I believe is like right after it came out. Like it came out at the start of 2023, maybe even February, and it shut down really fast. Blaseball was shut down on June 2nd, and Knockout City, one that I actually did play and kind of grew to like, was shut down on June 6th. Only Up was shut down September 8th. Call of Duty Warzone or Warzone Caldera, which was like the old kind of map of it, was shut down on September 21st, 2023. The Cycle Frontier, which is like a first-person extraction shooter, if you remember that, September 27th. Gundam Evolution, November 29th. Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2 and Battlefield 1943 were shut down on December 8th. And then the day before, infamously, came out and then shut down like within a few months, I think, or a few weeks. So games get shut down all the time. And one of the things that we've kind of, I think, at some point talked about as well is the idea that like certain games it's understandable that like okay, it's gone, you can't really play it, it's online only. To a degree, as Nick was saying, maybe it would be nice okay if you could just go into X Defiant and like just run around the maps, maybe like do some 1v1. I don't know if that's even necessary. Just experience it because like these developers spend so much time crafting these maps, designing these levels, and and creating the assets, and all that is essentially scrapped. There are sometimes you can reuse assets from different things, and sure that case can be made, but by and large, all that stuff is just going to waste. It's like just a tax write off, in a way. But then also, when it comes to games like Marvel's Avengers, or as I said again, this is the episode of Anthem. But like, there's a narrative there, and when it comes to the narrative, especially, there's CGI animators, there's for cinematics, there's voice actors, there's all the same thing applies for the level design, textures, and assets, and sound design, and like all of that will go away when you make a game like Marvel's Avengers or Anthem offline. There's just no way to not play it off. Yeah, no, there's no way to play it offline. And I think there's been a few instances where game developers have updated it to like, hey, you can play it offline and at your own leisure. But that's very rare that ever happens. And it ultimately means that as a both a consumer, you're losing out on something, but also as just like a general like piece of art, it's just kind of getting erased, which it's gonna sound like a fucking crazy thing, right? But it's like a painting getting burnt. It's like okay, that thing's gone.
I was trying to think of like a similar example, and it's really hard to come up with it because it's like it is specifically for like physical goods or something like that would happen. It's like you don't hear about like oh the licensing expired on a Katy Perry album and now Spotify erases it from existence and you can't listen to it anymore. It's like a weird thing that is kind of uniquely specific to games.
Yeah. 100%. Because like even if Spotify is like, oh, the licenses run out, we have to like you can't stream this music right now. If you bought a CD of one of those albums, you can put it in and it'll work. They're not gonna like update it and be like, oh yeah, the CD is no longer functional. Go buy the newest album.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm playing that metaphor out that I was kind of going for, like it's sort of like the modern day. It's again. It sounds crazy to say, but it's like the modern day version of like fuck. It's gonna say it's like Genghis Khan going and like breaking like statues, of like places he's conquering. It's like, yeah, this is there's no history here. You're getting rid of all of that, like that history or that story that was once there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Speaking a little bit about kind of stop killing games. So the European Citizens Initiative, which I think originally they were asking for a million signatures initially. They're now at 1,294,844. Again, you can go to stopkillinggames.com and support that. They say that specifically about the European Citizens Initiative. This is quote, this is the most powerful option at our disposal, but it requires a massive number of signatures from citizens of EU countries in order to pass. If we can pass the signature threshold, which again they've passed the signature threshold, now they're on what they're saying is overdrive. So if they hit, I think like their current goal seems to be 1.4 million, but quote, if we can pass the signature threshold, there is a very strong chance that the European Commission will pass a new law that will both protect consumer rights to retain video games and customers that customers have purchased and advance preservation efforts massively. And that also goes off to the idea that the idea of game preservation, right? I know, Nick, I'll let you talk to this a little bit because I know you have a more of like a kind of a stronger feel of like game preservation, in terms of like old games need to be. I mean, he before the podcast, he just bought 2 games, like old classics that and to complete it and have it in the collection. So I'll have you talk a little bit about that because game preservation is very very important.
Yeah, it kind of connects to like a different topic that I wanted to bring up also, because I did watch like a little bit of people talking about this prior to the podcast. I told you earlier today when we were talking about like, what we wanted to talk about, that I was like, I'm not like super familiar, but like I did hear like some talking points here and there. And one of the I forget who exactly it was that I was watching, so unfortunately I can't shout them out, so I apologize. But it was a broader topic, more about the generations and their view on ownership and leasing, where it's like people from our kind of generation that grew up, with buying a CD or buying a video game in a store. Like, we're kind of like the last people where it's like, we have that ingrained thing where it's like, if I'm paying money, like I own the thing, I should be allowed to do with it what I please or whatever. Whereas a lot of younger people now are only being brought up in the streaming age and stuff, where it's only licensed stuff and you don't own anything. And essentially the point was that somebody, if you're like talking about this issue with somebody that only has ever been exposed to licensing and like, limited contracted whatever term I'm trying to go for there, they might not see it as like that big of an issue. It's like, well, like everything else is like that, so why should this be any different? So I think that is certainly an angle to it, and it is a bit weird because it's like, obviously, like you and I, like if we have our physical collections and stuff like that, and that was sort of a conscious choice for me a while back, where it's just like, okay, like I collect these games obviously that I want to play. It's like I don't buy every physical game I come across, right? Like nobody can conceivably do that. But it's like, it is nice having a physical selection of things that as long as your proprietary hardware and everything is still in good working shape, that you are able to experience that, and nobody outside of a thief can come in and take that from you. So it's just like, it is weird. And like, I do think, because it also, while I'm sitting here trying to describe this, it also brings up an interesting question where, like, the example that I mentioned earlier, which was also an example that I saw some people talking about like, even if it's just like an empty level to run around and stuff, it's like, well, technically you aren't really preserving the game at that point, because it is a different experience when there's no players in the multiplayer game to go off. So it's like, in one way you're preserving the artistic integrity of things like level design and sound design and stuff, but maybe you're losing game design in that preservation and stuff. So it's a very complex kind of thing to address, specifically preservation when it comes to multiplayer stuff. I feel like the best solution to that is like a bot kind of mode or whatever included with any of these games that like allows you to experience that. Like a couple years ago I played Time Splitters 2, and that has, Time Splitters multiplayer was like kind of a big part of its identity back on the PS2 and like Xbox and GameCube and stuff. And obviously there wasn't much online multiplayer at that point. There were some games, and I think like Time Splitters Future Perfect might have been one of those early online ones, but currently it's like you could play like split screen or you can play against bots, and it's like that was a way that I was able to experience that multiplayer after playing the single player, even though that was a game released on the the PlayStation 2 and everything that I was playing. So it gets, I don't really know. It's such a hard thing. And then whenever they are going through like an official channel, like trying to get this passed into like EU law and everything, it's like, yeah, that's the place that you have to do it. But at the same time, like, it just feels like there's so many arguments for, but I mean, I guess that's just law in general, right? There's so many arguments to either perspective where it's going to be a tricky uphill battle to be like, this is the way in a word of law that this has to be achieved. But like, I feel like there's just so much gray area there.
Yeah. And I think they kind of, first of all, I think that you brought up a very interesting point that, what you were watching in terms of like this generation, the most kind of younger generation, not necessarily understanding ownership. I think that's, a factor of just like there's also like the idea that like, oh, you can't even like buy a house. You have to rent a house. It's like
Hmm.
that's like ingrained, I guess, in the current culture. Um, though I guess that speaks more about the economy than
Right.
than just
Bigger
the
issues than the Respawn Station
yeah,
podcast is able to solve.
yeah, to dissect. Yeah. But no, it is definitely like a conscious effort of, you know, there's a happy median. Like I definitely do not think that you have to be 100% physical media the entire time, right? Like I have a Spotify subscription. I know that I'm listening, like I have all these songs saved in my library, and all these albums kind of like, pre-saved or saved or whatever. And I know that those I have zero ownership of any of those. I'm paying a monthly price just to access them without ads. But at the end of the day, I'm not like putting them in my bag and taking them with me. And once my subscription runs out, if it does, they're gone until I re-up the subscription. And that's totally like that. In that case, like that is something I understand, right? And same thing with Game Pass. If Game Pass, I own none of the stuff in Game Pass. Same thing with PlayStation Plus, because I don't want to be called, yeah, Xbox hater. No, like same thing with all those subscription things. Every PlayStation Plus subscription game that you get that you save every month, if you don't have a PlayStation Plus membership, then that thing's, it's just another, that's just a photo on your thing. That's par for course. That just that's the way it is. That's the model. That's the little carrot at the end of the stick to get you to subscribe.
Hmm.
Um, but and to kind of play with the idea of like, okay, well, not everything needs to be physical, but more so, I think it needs to be that it's the option that matters, right? Like it's the option to play it if you want. Like I'm not saying that everyone who, I don't know. Again, we'll use the Crew as an example because it's like such a topical one, I guess. Specifically, actually, they mention it here on the website. If you are French and own a copy of a game called The Crew in any capacity, please consider following our guide for submitting information that may be sent to the UFC K. Quaisar later. It's some French term, I'm sure, but essentially they're trying to they're trying to file complaints about the fact that the Crew was delisted, and you can no longer play it. So if we use the Crew as an example, the Crew is a game that you can buy physically. It was on shelves, and until a few months ago, you could just go to like a GameStop or a mom and pop shop, and pick up a copy of the Crew for the PS4, for example. And what the delisting and the servers shutting down for that meant, it was that disc is now just like a coaster. It's just plastic.
Hmm.
And I'm not, this movement and just kind of our general debate isn't about, every single person has to be able to buy physically. It's the option that if you did buy it physically, you can just play it if you would like. Just in terms of the Crew, even if it's just driving around the map, completing those objectives, like whatever the race kind of like, I believe the format of the Crew is that you're racing across America or whatever. So, just to do that, I think is why this is so important. And I think games preservation in general is a is a huge kind of conversation in its own right in terms of games. At the very simple way to say it is that games are an art form, and robbing a future generation of kind of experiencing it, or kind of just like witnessing it, or the only way to witness it is like watching YouTube videos or something like that is not quite the same. And I know,
Yeah.
Xbox has been and tinkering with the AI that can watch gameplay videos and recreate video games, but I guarantee you it's not going to have the same artistry or level of kind of finesse or intention that the real games have.
Yeah. The While we were talking about this, I was thinking about like, you were mentioning like games becoming lost media and stuff, and it's like, thank God you have something like a YouTube or whatever that, you can at least still see time capsules, I guess, of these games that aren't playable again. And I was just thinking, I was like, it's going to be like the modern day Alexandria, like, burning if YouTube were ever to just be like, we're wiped out and it's gone. It's like there's so much stuff. It's like those games at that point, like, yeah, you wouldn't have unless it was like, individual people's websites and stuff like that, or other, media hosted websites that you'd even be able to know what the games realistically looked like and stuff like that. And also it made me think of another kind of unique to games thing, and it's that how it is an art form, yes, like other art forms, obviously, but it's also very uniquely tied to the technology, I feel like, that a lot of the other art forms aren't. It's like, obviously, with film, for instance, like you have film cameras and stuff like that, and there is an element of, film preservation and stuff, but it's dealing with like mostly like damaged or lost film reels, right? When you're like getting a scan of that and like being able to bring that to the modern day. Whereas I feel like for games specifically, with all the vastly different hardware like parameters and stuff, it would be like taking a film and then taking the camera that it was built on and fully deconstructing the camera and figuring out how the reel spun through, the sensor and everything, just to get the first frame of the movie to show up, right? So like it also extends further into like, just like the tech side of it, that I feel some of those like, again, I'm talking out of my butt here for some things, but it's just like, it feels like, a old studio recording of like the Beatles doesn't have as many hoops to jump through getting to a Spotify listenable version that like a game on the Sega Saturn has to go through to be preserved in a, appropriate degree for a video game, right? So that also is like a whole other side thing where it's like, even just in like the legality sense, it's like, okay, is the stuff that we have here, can like we even run this stuff anymore for preservation specifically? But like, also, because we're kind of dodging, or not dodging, but we're like bouncing between preservation and stop killing games, and I feel like stop killing games at least is more so targeted at the more modern stuff, right? Where it's like the stuff that is just like actively being like shut down and like removed access and stuff. And so like, yeah, I don't, it's such a weird predicament. It's like, even if like, the companies would be like, okay, we're sunsetting this, project, like here is like a web domain that like can highlight the assets or something. It's like, it's a very odd situation.
Yeah, and actually, I think like games getting canceled actually like somehow often live on in some way. Like there's to this day like canceled builds of games that are just like leak onto the internet, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, remember this game that was like canceled like a decade ago? Now you can kind of boot it up on your PC and kind of just play around with it. But as we wrap up the conversation, and about just this kind of gigantic kind of discussion point, and obviously there's a lot of contention here, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is that like, it's not about, again, I'm going to repeat myself, but it's not about every single game having to stay up indefinitely if a person buys it. It's just the option that if you have a copy of the game, there is some way for you to just access it because you are, you bought it. I'm going to point at a few different places to kind of point you guys in the right direction. First of all, on the StopKillingGames.com website, they specifically say that they are not currently seeking funding for Stop Killing Games. So any claims of fundraising activities in their name is fraudulent. So do not fall for that. Check the website if you want to if you want to make sure if that kind of changes later on. But as of now, as of when we're recording this, they are not raising money. This is just like, if you're living in Europe, you go Go put your signature on there if you believe in it. They have actually a tab that's called Past Actions, and it's literally just things that they have done, in different parts of the world and what has resulted from it. Like in France, they submitted complaints to the DGCCRF on the crew, and the result was the issue has been escalated to the highest levels of the agency, decision pending. Like that, they're actually like making some sort of an impact here in kind of bringing these things up. So it does matter, and it is kind of having an impact. It's not just like a fruitless kind of conversation. They also have an FAQ on their website, and there's two questions that I'll highlight, but I encourage you to. They have a lot of questions that they are answering there, and you can kind of get your fill of kind of conversation out of it, or any curiosities you might have. They might answer over there. But the two questions that I'll answer, or that I'll highlight, are: Question 1, why should people care about publishers destroying video games? Well, quote, while video games are primarily just for entertainment and not so much and not of much consequence, the practice of a seller destroying a product someone has already paid for represents a radical assault on consumer rights and even the concept of ownership itself. If this practice does not stop, it may be codified into law and spread to other products of more importance over time, such as agricultural material, agricultural equipment, additional educational products, medical devices, and etc. It is important consumers maintain a basic level of rights so as to not be overrun by predatory practices. Additionally, video games are unique creative works. And actually, right there, I'll take a pause and I'll actually point to a little cheeky plug here to the $80 era, an article that I wrote back in May and about how gamers are paying for less. One of the points that I specifically call out was that you're not owning games. Part of the package that people are paying more for less. You're not owning a lot of the games. I highly recommend checking that article out. Obviously, it helps us out, but I'm happy with that article, and I think it gives you a lot of information. Continue with this, though. Additionally, video games are unique creative works, and the concept of destroying every existing copy of a book, song, or film, etc., would be considered a cultural loss for society, while a less recognized medium, video games, still deserve to have basic protections against the complete and willful destruction of many of its works. The second question, actually, you know what? Real quick, Nick, I'll throw this out there, because again, sometimes we find weird little loops in these episodes, kind of as we, we don't script this out incredibly much. We kind of try to just talk naturally as it comes. But we were talking about this idea that, there's no auteurs there's not enough auteurs in video games, and there's not one person. But it would be interesting of there is a master copy, right? Like usually in movies, people will be like, yeah, this is the print, this is the film print of my movie that I have in my basement, whatever. Mm-hmm. We need to have more auteurs so that they can have the master copies of their games. You got to keep things around. You got to keep those around. Anyway, that's the next one. Aren't you asking companies to support games forever? Isn't that unrealistic? The answer for that is, quote, no, we are not asking that at all. We are in favor of publishers ending support for a game whenever they choose. What we are asking for is that they implement an end-of-life plan to modify or patch the game so that it can run on customer systems with no further support from the company being necessary. We agree that it is unrealistic to expect companies to support games indefinitely and do not advocate for that in any way. Additionally, there are already real-world examples of publishers ending support for online-only games in a responsible way, and the examples that they have is Gran Turismo Sport, published by Sony, Knockout City, published by Valence Studios. Really? Is Knockout City published available offline? That's kind of crazy if it is. If you can just play it locally, maybe? Oh, yeah, it is. Right now, you can go to Steam and for free download Knockout City Private Server Edition. Duh, that's actually kind of sick. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check it out. You can just host your own servers. Oh man.
Which again, that's
Mega Man,
the ideal situation.
Yeah, no, 100%.
We didn't really mention it throughout this, but in the back of my head, I was thinking it's a lot of this stuff does happen in the preservation circles. It's just on individuals to circumnavigate the systems to set up private servers and stuff like that. this is maybe like a little bit different, but like recently Concord, like an early build of that leaked online that people can get up and running on like the menu and stuff. It's like naturally that's not like, you know, publisher, you know, approved or whatever per se, but it's just like, even if it's just like, you know, making it a little bit more official, I guess, would be the overarching like goal. It's just like it shouldn't have to be people just like modding and leaking things that allow these things to live on.
They also say Mega Man X Dive, published by Capcom, Scrolls / Caller's Bane, published by Mojang, and Duelist, published by Bandai Namco, as just a few examples of where it's done right. Again, go check out the website, stopkillinggames.com. Read it for yourselves. Go sign it if you're in Europe. This is something that we, do think is important. You know, it's just going forward. It sucks seeing games go away. And honestly, I think they do a good job of, obviously, it's definitely played up as like, you know, like, okay, yeah, it's just video games, but imagine it happens to other things. That's while it is a ridiculous idea as well, that you know, to extrapolate it to this larger scale, inevitably in a consumer in a capitalist world, I think that's kind of the way things will go. So it's just not setting up a bad precedent.
Yeah, I was gonna say
precedent.
This also just kind of popped into my head where it's like it's also very reductive, because I was just like, has there been a point where this has been the case? And it's just like, yeah, like in, you know, 1890s when the radio was invented and people had to sit around the living room to catch the radio play. It's like, yeah, like we're gonna hit a point where it's just like, okay, next week Elder Scrolls, you know, or Fallout 7 is coming out. I have to be at home to be able to play Fallout 7 for, you know, 20 hours because they're delisting it right after that. And it's just like, it's such a weird, like, reductive state that the future you could see birthing from this would be.
But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for this episode of the Respawn Station podcast. We hope that you got a little bit out of this whole discussion, both in terms of like you understand what Stop Killing Games is all about, but also kind of where we stand with it. And hopefully we've given you enough information, not just in, you know, dipped in our own personal thought or opinions, so that you can make your own opinion on it. Obviously, you know, feel free to have a discussion down in the comments. You know, let us know what you think. Check out RespawnStation.com. We got some exciting stuff going on over there, including, a pretty good interview that we just locked in. Nick actually just prepared something earlier this week, and we'll see that coming up in the next few weeks. So that'll be definitely a highlight of the last few months. So absolutely, check out RespawnStation.com for that. Of course, on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe so you get notified whenever we go post a new episode of just this show or anything else. We have more stuff planned. And August will be a big month for us as well. I'll tease it that much. And check out Start Screen Gallery on Instagram. But with that said, I have nothing else. Nick, anything from you?
Nope. I think that was a really nice conversation and a fun episode. So, hope everybody enjoyed.
Well, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thanks for watching, and have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.